Imagine you are going on a hike next weekend. Where would you go? Would you go alone or would you go with friends and family? What would you pack? And what would you take with you in case things don't go as planned? Now imagine you're going on a longer, harder hike. Someplace you've never been to, someplace more exciting you've always wanted to go to. Where would you go? Who would you go with? What would you pack? Now think about how these two hikes are different in your own mind. In my case, my local hike would be right up here to the Pleasanton Ridge. And I've taken this hike so many times that I would go with our hyper-energetic 10-year-old or with a friend that I want to spend some more time with. This hike is so simple and so familiar that I don't need anyone except myself, a couple of bottles of water, a couple of energy bars, and a fully charged cell phone to navigate it safely and have fun along with it. And for my longer, harder dream expedition hike, I would climb the tallest mountain in the world, Mount Everest. But obviously, I'd planned for Everest quite differently than I would for the Pleasanton hike. I would learn all I could about the mountain. I would buy the best equipment. I would only invite friends and family who are fit and reliable. But most importantly, I would hire the most knowledgeable and experienced Sherpas I could find, because there's so much about the mountain and the Himalayas that I don't know. Why are these two hikes so different? Because the local hike we can do from within our comfort zone. We can be on autopilot. However, for the other hike, you have to plan a lot more. And you have to depend on people who are much more experienced than you are. When you go to the Himalayas, and a lot of people climb the Himalayas, every year, 700 people attempt to climb Mount Everest. And 2 out of 3 actually succeed. But every year, between 5 and 10 people die from falls, exhaustion, hypothermia. To climb Everest successfully, you must break out of your comfort zone and embrace situations very different than the ones you're used to. And more importantly, you must learn to trust and rely on those Sherpas who are likely very different people than the ones you're used to. But how can you rely on these Sherpas who are likely very different than you're socially used to, probably don't speak English, maybe have different diet and hygiene habits, and you have to rely on them like your life depends on it, because on Everest, it does. So how can you trust them? This is where an understanding of diversity, inclusion, and most importantly, belonging comes in. So what is belonging? Belonging is a sense of fitting in, of believing that you are an important member of a group. Now remember, it's not the same as feeling similar to everyone else. Instead, you belong when you feel safe and valued for embracing what makes you different. Diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice. But belonging is believing that your voice will be heard. I bet all of you have been in situations where you did not feel a sense of belonging. Perhaps you were the only woman at the table, or the only person of color on a committee, or the youngest, or the oldest. And you were even encouraged to speak up, only to realize that nobody actually cared about what you had to say or had any intention of doing the things that you wanted to do. That feeling sticks with you, doesn't it? That moment you realize you don't belong. So you just stop caring. You half-heartedly try a few more times, but eventually you just give up. You go on mute. Again, diversity is having a voice, is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice, but belonging is having that voice be heard. So how can you foster a sense of belonging in the people around you? There are many, many barriers to belonging. But before we get to the barriers of belonging, it's important to realize that belonging is not something you can force upon someone. It's something that's given. It's something that somebody has to feel. You have to create an atmosphere of belonging. So what are some of the barriers to belonging? It could be socioeconomic status. What car do you drive? What neighborhood do you live in? Do you have an accent? It could be your belief system. Are you liberal? Are you conservative? Are you somewhere in the middle? It could even be education. Do you have a college degree? Which college did you go to? And all of these barriers are because we humans are inherently tribal. We have 7 times as many neurons in our brain devoted to scanning for risk as we do looking for reward. And as a result of that, we are much more likely to trust those who are like us, who have something in common with us, and much more cautious of anyone who appears different from us. But I'll let you in on a secret. Your very own ninja move. Those very same deep-seated behaviors that drive you to only extend belonging to those inside your tribe can be used to break down those barriers to belonging. How? By looking for and finding uncommon commonalities. By making an effort to connect with people who appear quite different from you at first glance. Let me give you a perfect example of finding uncommon commonalities. Our daughter and I went on a hike recently with her classmates and some of their parents. I found myself walking next to a mom who grew up in a small town in Arkansas. I grew up in one of the most densely populated cities in the world. My neighborhood in India was home to almost 1 million people. So I couldn't imagine having anything in common with her, and I bet you she felt the same about me. But we struck up a conversation nevertheless. Turns out, she and I lived in Wichita, Kansas, of all places, in the late 1990s at the exact same time. We shopped at the same grocery store. We even ate at the same restaurants. Who knows, she might have been at the lunch table next to me or behind me in line at Piggly Wiggly's. From that day onwards, she has been in my tribe and I have been in hers, because we will always have Wichita, Kansas as our uncommon commonality. I practice 3 simple ways to overcome barriers to belonging. But while they are simple, they are not easy because it involves turning off the autopilot that our lives are on and paying attention to the world around us. First, be aware of your own biases. As a science major, I realized I had this bias of listening more carefully to those people with a scientific background because that was my tribe. Second, listen actively and with empathy. Pay close attention to what people are saying without interruption, please, even when you disagree. Listen for what they are not saying. Listening is the foundation of belonging. Third, be human. Just share something about yourself. Tell your story. Listen to their story. If you do that over and over, you will be able to find those uncommon commonalities, like I did with my friend from Arkansas during our hike. Developing a sense of belonging doesn't only have to happen when you're faced with something difficult and dangerous like climbing Mount Everest and you need to get to know those Sherpas well. It can be used in everyday situations to make our lives more fulfilling and to build a better society. So put down that cell phone. Talk to someone sitting next to you. Throw a block party. Invite all of your neighbors. Maybe ask some of them to go with you on your weekend hike. Talk about music, food, your favorite travel experience, sports. It doesn't even matter what you talk about. I often break the ice by talking about stuff I'm terrible at, like cooking or fixing stuff. If you show your imperfect human side, you will watch those barriers come down like magic. If you lead with acceptance and love, not judgment or fear, you will give people a chance to surprise you. If you use this newfound understanding of the power of uncommon commonalities, you will be helped by people you don't even know yet. When something unexpected, uninvited, catastrophic may happen in your life. And even if it doesn't, and I certainly hope it doesn't, by fostering a sense of belonging in the people around you, you will have a more fulfilling life and you will build a better society. Either way, you win. We all